Hello, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at what we are playing against the bishop's opening. The bishop's opening is starting with e4. We are, of course, replying with the e5. That's we already know. And here, bishop c4. That's where the name of the opening is coming from because white is developing the bishop on the second move already. The main idea of white is that they are not rushing yet with moves like knight f3 or f4, and they can be played later, depending on what black is doing. Another idea is, of course, that white also doesn't want to go for the Petrov defense, and that's why bishop c4 is being played. So we're going for a very normal reaction because after knight f6, we're not only targeting the e4 pawn, but also we are ready to push for the d5. And basically in this position, white has to consider to defend the pawn on e4 or to do something else. So let's start. I mean, there are many moves in this position which white can play. So let's start with following. So in case of d4, actually, we're going to take the pawn. And here, after c3, we can actually already transpose to the chapter of center game after playing knight c6. So you can find more details about this variation there. In case of knight f3 in this position, white wants to take on d4 with a knight and also wants to play Urusov gambit. But in this position, we can play knight c6 and then we would transpose to the Scotch gambit. So definitely there are a lot of transpositions which can happen. So you're going to see more details on this position in the Scotch gambit chapter. So let's start with more independent moves. Not more, but really independent moves. So f4. So this is Greco gambit. It was played long time ago, and it is very, very dubious. First of all, it's kind of a version of the King's Gambit, but we have already knight on f6, which is already a huge advantage because we are ready to capture a pawn on e4. And that's what we are doing, because with a knight on e4, playing something like queen h4 check is already a huge achievement, since d3 is going to be difficult to play. So now after d3, we have queen h4 check, pawn goes to d3, trying to defend knight g3, knight s3. And here there are two ways to go. There is opportunity to play queen g3 or queen h5. Computer might say queen h3 is a bit better, but since we play a queen h5 against knight on c3, that's why I also recommend to play queen h5 in this position. We're going to see the other position later, why we cannot really play queen h3. So queen h5, rook g1, and here actually we have to be very careful because it feels like we can go with all the way with e4. But unfortunately, it would be a very big mistake, since after takes, knight takes, queen e4, there is first of all this problem, and then after the d5, it feels like we defended the knight, we are taking the bishop, but the very nice move, rook g5, we cannot take obviously the rook with the knight, and everything is just falling apart and black is just losing. So we have to be careful and we have to go for the d5 instantly. Instead of e4, we're going for e5, d5, sorry, bishop d5, ef. And after knight c3, bishop b4, we are threatening to take on d5 and castle. After bishop f4, we're taking. And basically, after finishing the development, we realize that we are up a pawn. We are having a nice position of the king, very safe. We are ready to continue development. We're ready to play something like rook e8, so developing the bishop. And we're ready to create some problems for white. So this was a d3 move. In case of knight c3, we're having the same reaction. The main move, the main idea of knight c3 is obviously to stop the d5 push in some of the positions. So after queen h4, g3, we're capturing. Again, white cannot capture due to this very nasty pin. And after knight f3, in this position, it is a must to play queen h5. In case of queen h3, after rook g1, rook g3 is a big tempo. It's a huge intermezzo move, which we have to react to. For example, in this position, playing something like knight f5. But after knight f5, fe, and it's actually white who is better in this position, shockingly. But that's what it is. So that's why queen h5 is the move we have to play it. And after rook g1, e4 is already possible. There is no pawn on d3 as it was in the other line. And after rook g3, ef3, rook f3, there is also a possibility to play d4. But after bishop b4, when we are pinning the knight, we don't really have any problems any longer. With the development, we are ready to castle. We are ready to play. Okay, we cannot play d5, but we can obviously develop the pieces in different locations, and we're going to be, for a moment, up a pawn. After rook takes on f3, so in case rook recaptures, there is, of course, a huge threat in this position right now. Rook e3, checking the king and winning the queen. So we have to definitely take care of that. Bishop e7 looks super logical. Queen e2, creating some threats even more, trying to keep the king in the center, not allowing castle to happen. But actually castle is possible since white cannot really capture on e7. The rook is going to hang. Bishop h4 is something what is going to be followed. Knight f6, d6, developing the bishop from c8, bringing the rooks to the open files or semi-open files, and we're still up a pawn in this position, so definitely a huge position for black with huge winning chances. So this was about the f4. f4 is not so great, but possible. The next move we're going to look at is a bit strange. I mean, the move order is a bit strange, to be honest. It's knight f3. Definitely, I mean, I have never had something like this. I have never faced it, but it's definitely possible. So let's look at it. Basically, we can say that it could transpose, let's say, to Petrov, knight f3, knight f6, and then bishop c4 was played, which doesn't really make so much sense. But all right, let's take a look and see what should we do. So we're taking the pawn on e4. Definitely, we can do it, especially since we can play b5 with a tempo attacking the bishop on c4. In this position, in case white would like to sacrifice, bishop f7, king f7, knight e5, king goes to g8, and after queen h3, queen f3, it looks like there is a checkmate threat, an attack on the knight, and everything looks perfect. But simply after knight f6, all threats are covered. There is no check on d5, there is no checkmate problem, and knight is not hanging, so we're simply up a piece and winning. In case of a d4, we have to many times look at this move at the d5, and in this case, it's again working perfectly. d5, we're entering with a pawn to the center, defending the knight, attacking the bishop. Bishop e3, capturing on d4, trading some pawns. Bishop e6, just defending everything, solidifying, and we're just up a pawn for not much compensation from white. We are ready to finish the development. Obviously, white is already castled, so we have to take care of our king as well. It can be, it could be a long castle. It could be also a short castle. We're going to see where we will put the bishop. Will it be e7 or c5 and castle short? It just depends on our ambitions in this position. Definitely, opposite castle is a more, more challenging and more dynamic and sharp position. So it's just up to you. In case of a castle, white is not challenging black at all. So again, we can go with a d5 move, attacking the bishop, protecting the knight. Bishop goes away, knight c6. We are continuing development. And after d3, of course, we have to step back and give back the pawn. There is not much else we can do. But after castle, suddenly we realize that The only two pieces which are developed are not so good located. Bishop is pretty bad on b3, it's cut out of the game. Queen on e5, it's a great piece, but it's going to be attacked by many pieces. We can play rook e8, bishop d6, targeting the queen. We are going to continue our development with the temp piece, and it's a slightly better position for white, definitely. Queen e2 is trying to put already pressure on the e5 pawn, attacking the knight. Definitely logical move in the style of the Petrov. We're going with a d5, immediately attacking the bishop, defending the knight. Very typical idea. And d3. d3 is saying I would like to trade my bishop for your knight, which we're gladly accepting. And after knight c6, queen takes c4. We're just playing bishop e6. Even though, we didn't win the pawn, we are not up in material in this position, but we are reaching the position where we have a bishop pair. We're reaching this very nice endgame. We're going to develop with bishop to c5. We are going most likely short castle. We're going to fight for the d4 square. And yeah, for sure, it's a more pleasant position for black. Objectively, it's clearly better endgame for black. d3 immediately targeting the knight, makes a lot of sense. If we would have this position with bishop on f1, then it would be pretty much the same like a Petrov, but it would be a reverse position so that white would play with as black. But in this case, bishop is on c4, and it's actually very easy to target it many times. So that's why after d3 move, we can play knight c5, because after knight e5, we have d5. We're playing d5 with a tempo, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to go away, and we can already enjoy the bishop pair advantage. So bishop d6, we're developing, attacking the knight. At the same time, we are ready to finish our development castle and continue developing all the rest of the pieces. We are definitely ahead in the development, and also since we have a bishop pair, we have some material advantage in this position as well. Going into other lines, so d3 we already looked at. Yeah, knight c3 looks like it's the best try from white in this position, and this called Boden-Kesaritsky gambit. But actually, the thing is that we're not forced to take on c3. And very funny, we're going to transpose from here. And we're going to transpose to the Scotch 4 knights. In this position, we recommend you to play knight c6, because this is going to transpose. Yes, we leave the knight hanging on e4, but obviously after knight takes on e4, there is going to be the d5 move. So in that way, we are going to transpose, and you can see the continuation of this variation there. Knight e5, feels like the only way to try to do something. But the problem is that even though white is attacking so much on f7, there is just a tempo. d5 is just attacking the bishop with a tempo and defending the pawn on f7 at the same time. If bishop goes to b3, queen g5 is a double attack on g2 and the knight on e5, which is going to lead to a loss, material loss for white. So let's say if queen f3 is being played, obviously we're not blundering the checkmate on f7. It's a huge threat. We shouldn't do it. So we're playing bishop e6, defending the pawn on f7. At the same time, bishop on c4 is still in a trouble. So if d4 is played, the problem for us, we cannot yet take the bishop on c4 since our knight on e4 is kind of hanging. So we go for f6 and kind of forcing the endgame. And in that endgame, we will most likely have a bishop pair. So knight goes back to d3, dc. We're taking the pawn, the bishop, and at the same time attacking the knight on d3. After queen e4, our bishop on e6 is also hanging. So we have to play queen d5, We're trading the queens. We're getting into the endgame where we have a bishop pair, as we discussed earlier. Knight f4, bishop f7. Our development is easy. We have just 2 moves to finish it. Also, okay, we have to develop the bishop at some moment. And then we're having, obviously, a very nice position, very nice endgame. And definitely because of the bishop pair, I would say black is on the better edge of the advantage. Bishop e2, bishop goes away, and at some moment, it's also introducing such moves as knight g4 if we're going to play queen g5, attacking both knight and the pawn, as in the other lines. But it's pretty modest move. So we're playing bishop d6, targeting the knight again. D4 looks logical, defending the knight. Now we have funny situation in the center where both d4 and d5 pawns are there, and both knights, knight e5 and knight e4 also in the picture. But with the next move, we're going to challenge the knight. Knight d7, we're asking a question, what does this knight want to do? And after knight d7, bishop d7, this looks like a Petrov defense, but it feels like we are playing with white pieces and white is playing with black pieces. And because in this position, in this variation, white is losing the tempo with bishop c4, bishop e2 move. So what do we want to play next? We want definitely to castle, bring our king to the safety. We most likely will play something like f5 and create some attack on the king side. And okay, we have a very beautiful bishop, so let's not forget about that. And knight on e4. Knight on e4 is really a star of the position. That was all about knight f3. Now we're going to look at queen e2, and after that we're going to move to the main line d3. So queen e2 is protecting a pawn, and also it's stopping the ideas of d5 due to this problem on e5. So we have to do something here, and we are doing it. We're playing knight c6, not only defending the pawn on e5, but also introducing the threat of the knight coming to d4. So in case of knight f3, we're going to play practically, and we're going to play bishop c5, and we will transpose to the Italian games where this position is discussed in more detail. So c3 looks logical, stopping the knight coming to d4. We're pushing for d5 since our pawn is already defended on e5. e d5, knight d5. In case of knight f3 targeting the pawn on e5, we're having very nice knight f4 tempo. Queen has to go back because there is no other opportunity for the queen. And after bishop e6, bishop takes, there is an intermezzo, knight d3, king d1, and after fe, the position is already close to, or the game is close to being over right now because of the very chaotic and awkward position of the white. So d4, trying to use the pin, attacking the pawn on the e5. Bishop e6, it's actually a very important move. This, I mean, first of all, we're breaking the pin. And, oh, sorry. So first of all, we're breaking the pin. And also, white cannot so easily take on e5, but white is going to try. So let's see what happens after knight f3, e d4. In case of knight taking, we're going to trade the knights. And after bishop b4, trade, we're going to have a very nice position where white is having an isolated pawn, which definitely brings us some edge in the position. In case of the castle, we're not taking on c3, we're not helping white to develop. That's, I think, also one of the most important cases in this chapter. And generally, we don't really want to win material, but basically be worse in the development, we have to continue our development. In this case, we're playing bishop e7, developing the bishop. We don't want to win any material and harm our development. C takes d4, castle, knight c3, rook e8, and again we have similar position. The pawn is isolated. We have a very nice knight which is blockading the square. We can bring bishop to f6, targeting the pawn on d4. We can put more pieces to trying to put more pressure on the pawn on d4, and that's why position feels like slightly better. Objectively, it's kind of unclear position, around equal, but definitely it's more pleasant for black since because of this isolated pawn. So we were talking about d takes on e5, so what actually happens in this position, and that's why we have a pretty nice, not just pretty nice, but a brilliant move in this position. We're going to sacrifice material. Knight b4, knight d to b4. What does this move bring to the position? I mean, all tactic is working, and it's important to remember this move and why is it working. So, okay, first of all, the threat is definitely clear. We want to take on c4, and we want to give a fork. So white has to do something. Let's start with I mean, there are a few moves. There are a few moves in this position. There is a bishop. Let me remove first of all this arrows. 1 second. There is bishop f4. Sorry, bishop b5, bishop e6, knight e3, stopping this idea, and of course cb4. So these are the moves we're going to discuss. So we're starting with bishop b5. It's less critical. Queen d5, immediately targeting the g2 pawn, and after knight f3, a6, bishop takes, queen c6, and, well, you cannot really take because the bishop is hanging on c1. Knight e3 looks like a nice move because defending the square on c2. After bishop c4, knight c4, there is no fork. But after knight e3, king f1, queen d5, it looks like this pawn on e5. I mean, it's a very good price for attack from black. After knight e3, queen e4, I mean, the moves are pretty obvious, and well, the pressure is really huge on the white's king and white's position generally. That's why this knight a3 move is not really that much of a challenging. It's more passive. So what happens actually at the most critical feels like move, c takes b4. Well, we are not even capturing that pawn with a check, but we are playing knight d4 immediately. And the problem right now is that queen has to defend both the bishop and the square on c2. So let's say in this position, white wants to be smart and gives an intermezzo check. But after c6, we see that both pieces are hanging and something is going to fall definitely, so it's not really working. Queen d3, trying to both defend c2 and bishop on c4. One of the only squares where white can do it, or actually the only square. Bishop c5, targeting the queen. The idea is to bring the knight all the way to the c2 with a fork. And after queen d2, knight c2, king e2. There is even queen h4 intermezzo because we don't have to rush with taking the rook on h1. We have also opportunity to bring another piece to the game, also offer rook coming to d8. And well, position of white is collapsing. I mean, objectively, I guess white still has some chances to defend, but their huge attack is definitely bringing us big winning chances in this line. Bishop takes e6 is another move, so white is trying to eliminate one of the pieces which could attack. So yeah, obviously here, if we see intermediate move, we're going for it. Definitely we're seeing a check, we're making a check, knight d3, attacking both king and the bishop. In case king goes to d4, white is already losing because after after king d2, knight f4, the queen is going to fall. So king f1 going away. Then we're capturing a bishop on c1 with a tempo targeting the queen on e2. Queen has to go back. Away, not back. Queen c1, queen d3, knight d2. And we're just building more and more pressure on the king, general position. It looks like completely winning position. Like the pawn on e5 can be captured. We were down a pawn whole time, but now it just feels like we are up the whole rook because the rook is doing nothing on h1. And well, big problems for white. It's not easy to see how to defend everything. So king d1, trying to defend on the bishop on c1. Also knight f4 is not a question now because there's going to be queen d2 defending. So that's why we have to take the bishop on e6. But now there are some threats already in the position, playing something like knight f2 with a check. So all the discovered checks are there right now. So if king coming to c2, we have another knight dv4. I mean, knight will come to d4 already. It's second time knight is coming there. The problem is that after take, definitely there is going to be knight d4 and we're going to win a queen. So king b3, queen king is trying to run, but then we have very unpleasant checks. Queen d5, a6, threatening checkmate, c4, b5, king a3, and bishop b4. Very beautiful checkmate in the position. So knight d2 is a must, trying to block this x-ray on the king and potential discovered checks. Queen d5. If we're just looking at the position, for only one pawn, black is just achieving such a huge position, completely dominating here. In the next move, we're going to long castle. So let's say white is continuing the development, knight f3. Long castle, again, king cannot castle of the white. And here in this position, after king coming to c2, I would like you to stop the video and try to find the best move for black. I hope you found the move. It's also okay if you didn't find, so don't worry about that. But very beautiful move, g4. G5, sorry, g5. Basically, white is not having any time at all. And the problem is that g4 is a huge threat. What should white do? Should white take it? Next move, we are threatening to push for the g4, taking back the pawn on e5, developing the bishop to g7, to c5. There are so many threats in the position. Let's say knight b3 is going to be played, bishop e7, bishop g5, trading the bishops, rook g8, bringing and introducing the rook to the g file after knight coming back, knight f4, and yeah, we can start taking the pawns on g2, on e5. We can slowly take the pawns here and there and just enjoy the position because we're dominating here. And the only disadvantage is that we have material disadvantage, but that's going to be very easy to solve. So that was all about the queen e2 move. And now we're coming to the main line and the best move which white has in this position. It's d3. Immediately defending a pawn on e4. Very logical move, which is normally played in the bishop's opening. So now we're going for knight c6. Of course, I mean, d5 would be definitely an option to look and investigate if it's working or not. But the problem right now, it's a bit too early because the pawn on e5 needs protection. So again, we have a bunch of moves here from white. Let's start with the knight f3. And it's very easy to start with it because after the d5 move, we're going to transpose to the Italian game, d3, d5, exactly in this position. So there you can find all the rest. In case of c3, which looks like an idea to push for the d4 move, it's going to be pretty slow because in this position we can already go for the break in the center for the d5, our favorite move. Because after takes, knight f3, knight b6, attacking the bishop, and we're just also going to transpose to the Italian game. It's a very strange move order, but we're going to transpose there. All right, so bishop g5, trying to pin this knight, not to allow the d5 break, which looks very logical. But as always, when bishop is coming to g5, first we want to ask some question. What do you want to do? Do you want to go back? Do you want to capture? Do you want to go all the way back? So bishop has to decide. If bishop takes on f6, queen f6, knight f3, bishop c5, knight c3, knight e7, stopping the idea of knight d4. Knight f4, trying to challenge the bishop. Bishop b4, bishop goes all the way back to d6. We don't want to give our bishop. And after d4, knight g6, protecting the pawn on e5 with a knight. And, well, we achieved that we have a bishop pair. The position looks a bit messy right now, but sooner the position is going to open up and our bishops are going to start playing. So just for the bishop pair, we have a slightly better position. In case of a bishop coming to h4, this is the moment where we can already think, does it worth to play g5 and d5? And it does. g5, we're going forward. We are breaking the pin. Bishop has to go to g3. And after d5, we are already breaking the center. Pawn takes, knight takes. h4, white is trying to do something, create something on the king side, but it's not really helping because after g4, we close the position. There is not much happening. Knight c3, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop g7, knight e2, and knight a5. Attacking the bishop, we're most likely going to exchange it, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be very difficult to escape with a bishop. If not, it's impossible actually to escape with a bishop. And yeah, we're going to get a bishop pair. The bishop is a problematic piece on g3. And well, we have more active position. Even though we push this g5, the pawns are blocked on the king side. There is no attack happening, but we can even consider castling long as well. So this was bishop g5. In case of, sorry, wait, was it all bishop g5? Yes, sorry. A3. A3 is an interesting move. So the idea of A3, or one of the main ideas, is to have a step back with a bishop. Well, it's definitely not very critical move because it looks like it's prophylactical slow move. That's why, of course, we can immediately go for d5, ed, knight d5, knight f3. We're attacking the bishop. We're transposing to some kind of Italian game positions. Also, in this case, for example, if bishop takes on c6, bc, rook e1, rook e8, yeah, we're transposing to some kind of Italian game positions. So you can check out the chapter more, but a3 was never a move there, but the positions are very similar, and the ideas are definitely similar there as well. And one of the main things in this kind of positions that, okay, we spoiled our structure, but we have a bishop pair. So that's why we should be happy. f4, another idea. And in this case, the pawn on e4 is already defended. So this move comes in the spirit of the Vienna's game. But in this position, bishop is on c4 and not on f1. So in this position, once f4 is played, we learn in many of the chapters, many of e4, e5 chapters, that we have to consider a couple of options. So let's first of all, let me remove this. Yeah. So one of the options which we consider is taking on f4. The other option is playing d5. And okay, the option, of course, taking on f4 includes taking on f4 and then pushing d5 immediately. And the problem is that after f4 move, white is reacting. I mean, if we allow, sorry, if we allow white in this position, if we play some slow move like h6 or I don't know, or just some developing move, we cannot do it. We cannot allow that, because then white is going to stabilize, maybe play even f5, maybe knight f6. So such moves, we shouldn't allow white to do it. So that's why we have to react really quickly. So we take on f4 in this position. So playing d5 immediately is also good, but in this position, more precise to take first. Bishop takes definitely the main move. Let's first check knight f3. So basically, knight f3 is saying there is still time to develop before taking the pawn. So we're breaking with a d5. Knight takes, and actually there is not much time apparently, because now knight is defending the pawn on f4. Short castle, bishop e6, trade of the pieces happening, and bishop f4. Long castle, and that's position what we like. We have, first of all, opposite castle positions. We have a bishop pair, bishop advantage, bishop pair advantage, and we are ready to run with our pawns with f6, g5, h5, g4, h4, and so on and so on. So we are clearly better in this position. In case of knight c3, where black is not able to play the d5 any longer, we are going for bishop b4. Many times we're going for the spin when we want to play d5 anyway. So after bishop takes f4, we're castling. Actually, in this position, there is already no way for white to stop d5. That's why we first include the castle, and then we're going to play d5. After knight f3, here we go. We play our d5 move, e d5. And here we have a nice intermezzo, rook e8. And white's king is going to get some troubles, and already it's not going to be possible to castle for white's king. In case of knight g2, which looks the move which is stopping rook e8 ideas later, we're playing d5 anyway, pawn takes, knight, so there is no check anymore on e8, so we have to take on d5. And after bishop d2, which is trying to keep the bishops on the board, we're going to take on c3 with a knight. If knight takes, definitely there are going to be ideas of rook e8 or taking on c3 and then rook e8. So pawn takes on c3, bishop c5, and now white cannot really castle due to our bishop. So d4, trying to break this very nasty bishop. Queen h4 check is happening, and after g3, queen e4, another tempo on the rook on h1, rook f1, and again, and again, the problem for white is that white cannot castling, and black is winning material here and finishing the fully development. So after bishop d5, it's the only way how white can castle quickly, because after bishop d5, we got to take, and that's the moment where white is in time to castle. So queen goes back to d7, and here is already the position. We have the same side castle, but we have a bishop pair, and we have opportunity of playing b6, bishop b7, bringing the bishop on this nice diagonal and creating more pressure on the pawn on the g2. Okay, so this was a knight c3 option. Bishop f4 is, of course, the main move. Bishop f4, we're going for d5 as we wanted. D5, ed, knight d5, attacking the bishop again. And yeah, basically, white has to do something about it. And one of the moves is taking the knight on d5, queen d5. Queen is coming with a tempo. Knight f3, bishop g4, pinning this knight, creating some stress. So white has to castle, and black is long castling. So many times in these lines, we're going to have the positions with opposite castling, and once we have it, we were going to definitely have often the ideas of pushing the pawns, f6, g5, h5, especially enjoying the fact that we have a bishop pair. That's why we can create even more and put even more pressure and create even bigger attack on the king side. So queen e2 check is another idea of protecting pawn on g2. So the idea is after bishop e3, pawn takes, queen d5. Now the pawn on g2 is protected, but the pawn on c7 is hanging. So first let's start with knight c3 move. So now queen a5, also defending a pawn on c7. Long castle, we also go long castle. The thing is that bishop b4 is going to come very soon, targeting the knight and also the pawn on a2, so it's going to be very difficult for white to defend the pawns. After knight f3, there is going to be a very nice tactical trick which white is allowing black. Because in this position we can play bishop a3 very beautifully, attacking the pawn on b2, attacking the knight. And after bishop c2, we take the bishop, pawn takes on a3, and knight d4. Even more tactics is coming, since after knight taking on d4, there is queen c3. So queen d2 has to be played, knight f3. We already messed up pawn structure of white in some way. Let's also point out the h2. Rook c8, white is pretty much struggling with the king and where to castle, what to do. And the pawn structure is also pretty bad. While we can castle, we cannot castle long any longer, but we can castle short and one by one start targeting the weaknesses of white. Bishop takes c7 is one of the moves which makes the most sense if white is going for this line, because white is defending the pawn on g2, now taking on c7. It's not really a good move, but what to do? So we play rook c8, the bring new piece to the position, also targeting the c2 square. Knight c3, developing with a tempo makes a lot of sense. Bishop b4, counter-attacking, creating a pin. Knight cannot take the queen any longer. And bishop g4, bishop g3, bishop has to go back. So in this position, we're coming all the way with a knight to d4, attacking the queen, attacking the pawn on c2. And there are a lot of problems for white. White has to defend not only on c3, at the same time on g2, but yeah, basically taking on the c7 pawn just brought extra piece for white. For black, sorry, and white has to defend from one more attack. So let's say queen d2 is being played, castle. If knight g2, trying to defend, then we have knight e2, knight d5, bishop d2, and after, because, okay, king cannot take on e2 because rook takes c2 immediately. So like this. So king takes on d2, bishop takes d5, and then we're capturing a pawn. And the most pawns are falling, we're winning in this endgame. So after knight d5, immediately, bishop takes e2, king e2, rook c2. Again, rook is coming there, king e3, bishop d5. And, well, now knight cannot really get away. We're down the piece for a moment, but the knight is going to be coming out, and we're going to capture it in the next move. If not, then we're going to win the exchange by taking the rook on h1. So that was it about the whole f4 line for f4 variation. So let's go to the main move, which is knight c3, which makes much more sense in terms of the fact that white is stopping the idea of pushing d5. There is more control on the d5 square, and generally how we handle it, we're playing bishop b4. We're pinning the knight, we're still introducing the threat of d5 in the next move, and it's not going to be easy for white to not to allow it. But there is still, of course, the way. So let's start in this position with the a3 move. First attacking the bishop and making it take. Spoiler alert, it doesn't make too much sense because many times we're taking on c3 ourselves, so a3 is even like kind of a loss of a tempo, if we can call it like this. So d5, ed, knight d5, queen f3, bishop e6, we're defending everything. Again, after castle, we castle alongside. Our position is we are perfectly ready for an attack on the king side. We can start pushing the pawns with f6, g5, h5, g4, g4, h4, and so on and so on. So definitely a lot of ideas. Bishop d2, in case instead of a3, makes more sense, because with this move, first of all, white is breaking the pin, and now d5 is definitely not a move. But this is what we wanted, actually. We wanted this to happen. So let's put it like this. In this position, if we are playing slowly, we're castling, then after knight g2, we cannot really play any longer for d5. But this is a moment where we can still try to play for d5, and that's why we take the knight on c3. We're giving up a bishop pair advantage. So let's say if bishop takes on c3, we're castling, because the next move we anyway are going to play the d5. So let's say knight e2, d5, pawn takes, and okay, we're targeting both bishops, bishop d2, knight b3, knight b6, bishop has to go away, bishop b5, knight d4, takes, and well, we won actually a pawn right now, and we are much better. So let's say bishop goes back to b3, a5. If in case of a3, a4, bishop a2, okay, so bishop is already all the way blocked on a2. We are offering a trade of the bishop because that's a good piece. Bishop is trying to mess up our pawn structure. But well, it looks like a completely normal position. We actually more expanded on the queen side, where we can go for at some moment for something like a b4 to get rid of our double pawn. But yeah, looks like we're more active in this position. We're also having a pawn on e5. The d4 square for the knight is available as well. So what happens in case of a4, which is physically stopping the a5 pawn, a4 push for black? We're going with the rook e8, castle, bishop e6, and after trading the bishops again, we're getting this position where, okay, white has this bishop, we're having the knights. Again, we have a pawn on e5, and we have a better pawn structure. We have more space in this position long term. There is definitely an advantage, some slight advantage for black. So let's say castle is happening, not removing the bishop from d2. Then we play bishop e6. We're threatening to take on c3 and on c4, trying to double some pawns or even triple. So after bishop d2, queen d6, improving our queen. Knight c3, well, this is actually going to lead to a slightly worse endgame for white, because after knight c3, bishop c3, we're trading the bishops, trading the queens, and rook fd8. And the point is in this position that we're having 4 against 3 on the king side, while white is having these double pawns 4 against 3 on the queen side, and it's going to be much more difficult for white to create a passer later on than for us, because we have this this potential passer on the e-file. Also, definitely this pawn on e5, for example, after playing something like f6, is going to restrict the bishop much more. Our knight is going to be a better piece than the bishop for white. So in case of knight g3, not knight c3, but knight g3, we can go for f5. And now we actually restrict the knight from g3. There is not much knight can do. We're potentially threatening some moves in the position, like f4. And, well, we're also gaining more space, which brings our more, or gives us more long-term advantage. Rook e1, definitely possible to play this move, but simply after rook a8, we finish the development. And in this position, I mean, to say the least, we equalized. But again, due to this pawn on e5, which is not a weakness, which is fully protected, and we have more space. We have potential square on d4, as we were talking earlier. The position is slightly better for us. Queen f3 looks like the only move which is stopping the d5 idea, but as well as it's stopping d5, it's also stopping the knight coming to the f3 square. So that's why not the best move, definitely. So, well, we cannot play d5 right now, so we play d6. And after knight e2, we play bishop e6. And we're saying, all right, if you're going to capture on e6 our bishop, we're going to open the rook all the way on the queen. And in this position, white is castling. So I would like to ask you right now to stop the video for a moment and try to find the best move for black. I hope you found the move. In this case, sometimes we have some moves which are positional, sometimes which are more tactical. In this case, we have a tactical opportunity which white missed. And in this case, we are going for knight takes e4. So let's say, first of all, for those of you who said that bishop c4 is a move, it's definitely a move. It's a very decent move and great alternative if we didn't have knight takes the e4. So here dc4, knight d7, knight g3, and we have a positional game. We took the very strong bishop which was on c4. The bishop on c3 is not the best piece. Our knight are very nice pieces. And all right, we have an all right position around equal. There are some pros, there are some cons in the position, and we're just going to have a real game. But in this position, knight takes e4 is a huge move, since in case of bishop e3, there is a nice knight c3, pawn takes, because the huge threat is definitely knight e2 taking the knight with a check. So bc has to be played. And after fe, well, first of all, we're up a pawn. Second of all, we're going to have a very nice pawn structure in the center, the semi-open file, potential weakness, potential target, and, well, great position. So let's say queen takes on e4, then definitely we go for d5, attacking both the queen and the bishop. So after bishop takes d5, trying to win back the pawn, bishop d5, we don't really have any issues. I mean, queen has to go. I would assume queen goes to the e3 or g4. There are two moves. But yeah, there are definitely no issues for black. Again, we have more space due to the pawn on e5. We're just going to continue the development. We're most likely going to play something like f6 at some moment to protect the pawn on e5 and maybe target the g2 pawn at some moment would be an interesting idea as well. So now let's look what happens if white is taking on c3 with the pawn. So after b takes c3, there are some opportunities for white already to bring the rook all the way to b file, targeting the b7 square, as well as b pawn is protecting the d4 square in case of some knight d4 ideas. So let's say d5, we have to go for it. We're already fully ready for it. So e takes d5, knight takes d5. In case of knight e2, which is a pretty normal developing move, we're just going to short castle. White is castling as well, bishop e6, and after rook b1, we just can simply play b6 in this position, and we're just defending the pawn in that way. After knight g3, the knight is going towards the e4 square, which looks very logical. We can play queen d7 in this case. That after knight e4, we're going to play b6, so that we're stopping the knight c5 ideas of trying to win, or not win, but get the bishop on e6. So in case of knight g5, we're having bishop g4 move. Of course, we're having the tempo. The knight is maybe not ideal on g5 in this position. Even though white has a bishop pair, we still have some opportunities. And we have definitely more space in the center because of the e5 pawn and due to location our knights. And generally speaking, the pawn structure of white is worse than ours. That was knight e2. In case of knight f3, which looks like the most logical move, we're going to play bishop g4, immediately creating a pin on that knight on f3. So after castle, we have a couple of options, and here, in case we play queen d7, we have to be very careful, since after h3, a lot of blunders happen, and after bishop h5, there is a knight e5 move, which is attacking the queen and the bishop at the same time. After bishop takes d1, knight d7, bishop c2, knight c5, and white is actually winning this position. So we have to play queen d6. We shouldn't allow that opportunity of knight coming to the e5 with a tempo. And after queen e2, long castle. Case of queen a4, f5, queen d5, getting traded some pieces. We have more active position, more space, and also better pawn structure, which is definitely brings us to the fact that the white is worse in this position. h3, in case of h3 is played, then we can definitely move back. There are no more ideas of knight e5 in the position. Queen e4, bishop g6, queen g4, f5. Yeah, the queen is somewhat not getting trapped yet, but being placed, still keeping equality for white. So queen g4 check, king b8 has to be played, rook fe1, and after rook h f8. It's objectively an equality in this position, but definitely there is a lot of play in this position. And looking at our pieces and our pawns in the center, we can say that we have huge chances to create a play. This was knight f3. Queen f3 is also possible, targeting the knight on d5, but also taking away a square from the knight on f3. So we're playing bishop e6. Very logically, we defend the knight on d5. In case of rook b1, white is threatening to take the pawn on the b7. Here we can actually short castle, not even take... not even look at the pawn on b7, since after rook b7, knight a5 is going to create big problems for white in terms of the pawn structure, since after rook b1, knight takes c4, the triple pawns and all the weak pawns on the queen side are going to fall pretty much soon. So in case of queen g3, queen is attacking the pawn on g7. We have to play queen d6 in this position. We are sacrificing a pawn, since after queen g7, we can just long castle and use the time which white spent on gaining the pawn on g7 into development. In the next move, we are ready to play h5 and rook d to g8 or rook h to g8. So that was it about the bishop b2, bishop d2 move. And now we're going into the more active approach, bishop g5. So this was a bishop d2 move after bishop b4. Let's try to look at something more active, which is bishop g5. Well, bishop g5 looks very logical, pinning the knight, also once again stopping the d5 opportunity. But the problem here is, again, we are asking the bishop, please tell us what you want to do, where do you want to go, do you want to take on f6? And we go h6. So after h6, white has to decide and go either bishop h4. And again, with bishop h4, we have to consider, wait, bishop is on h4, we can play g5 and then d5 immediately. And that's what we are exactly doing in this case. So please, always when you have d5, just consider it for a moment, just see if it's working. And then if it is, maybe it's really the best move to go for it. So pawn takes, knight takes. There are some issues on c3. The bishop is completely misplaced on g3. It would rather be good on the d2 square. Knight e2, trying to defend on c3. Bishop e6, castle. And here, pretty nice. We're taking with the bishop on c3. So in case knight takes on c3, it's going to lead to some pretty bad endgame because we're going to create not only double pawn, but also triple pawn. So queen d1, rook a d1, king e7. Well, it looks like it's already winning position with all the weaknesses on the king side, queen side. Let's see at the bishop g3 is also a horrible piece, so that's already not much from the win. In case of bishop d5, queen d5, knight c3, queen d4. In this case, we're ready to go for the long castle and continue pushing the pawns, continue attack on the king side. Very nice position for black. All right. So bc, taking with the pawn, is left as an option. And after queen d6, definitely we would like to go for the long castle since we already weakened with the g5 pawn. So we want to go for the h5, h4 at some moment. Knight might go to the f4 square as a great position for white, for black. Black is much better, definitely. So what happens if bishop b4? Bishop b4 is trying to create some counterattack on the e5, creating a pin, attacking the pawn on e5. Black has to do something. And black is finding the knight f4. Super nice move. The knight's outpost is very beautiful on f4. So their bishop takes c6, pawn takes. Okay, there is a problem with the pawn structure, double pawns, potentially a pawn could be also weak. But we have a beautiful pieces. We have the bishop pair. We have a very nice knight on f4. Castle, h5, f3, h4, bishop goes all the way back. Rook g8. We're getting ready to castle alongside and pursue our attack on the king side. We're definitely having at least a slight edge here, and of course attacking chances on the king side. So this was a bishop h4 idea. What happens in case bishop takes on f6? Then we are capturing on c3 intermezzo. Very important, because if we take on f6 with the queen immediately, knight g2 is going to defend the knight on c3, and then after we take, the knight is going to recapture. This is very important. First to take with the bishop on c3, and then to take on f6. So now knight g2 is going to face this very beautiful pawn on c3, is not going to go to the d5 square. So d6, now we are ready to finish the development and decide where actually we want to castle. d4, white is trying to break in the center, and which is very commonly played because it looks very logical. And that's where we have this very beautiful move, queen coming to e7, targeting the pawn on e4. There are already some threats in the position. In case of bishop d3, short castle, and f5. We're breaking the center and not having any issues any longer. We want to trade this piece, these pawns. We're going to develop our bishop from c8, and well, black is at least equalizing here. Queen d3 looks like a logical move, defending a pawn on e4. Knight e5, targeting the bishop. Bishop b3, bishop d7, castle and long castle. We try to aim for a long castle to create more sharp positions, create more initiative, because we would like to attack the king on the opposite side. So short castle, e d4. So in case of cd4, we can easily take on e4 because there is no issue right now. We are in time to castle and then remove our queen. In case of knight takes, definitely we're not taking on d4, on e4. So we're castling first, and now we're threatening to take on e4. Definitely some issues for white in terms of a pawn structure. So that's why I would say there is at least slight edge for black. So in case of a castle, in case white is not going for the d4, just castling, white wants to go for the f4 with the tempo, trying to open up the position against the queen on c6. We have to do something. And the problem here is for us is that Well, the f4 wants is the move, the threat in the position. If we're playing something like g5 in this particular moment, it's going to be a bit imprecise because bishop b5 is the next move, which is going to pin our knight. If we play bishop d7, then c4 can be played, and knight is coming all the way to d5. Castle, knight c3, knight is coming. White is in time to create some ideas. And well, we might say that white is already the one who is on the better side of the edge in this position. So that's why very important first to start with a knight a5, attacking the bishop and saying, well, what do you want to do something with the bishop, or are you giving up the bishop? So there are a few options for white. Definitely white can say, I don't care about the bishop, I play f4. That was my plan, I want to go for it, you didn't stop me. But the problem is that this move doesn't make too much sense if there is no bishop on c4. Since that's why after knight c4 dc, you're playing bishop d7, and well, doesn't matter what is happening because the pawn on f7 is not going to be a problem any longer, since there is no bishop on c4. Let's say bishop b5, bishop is moving away. Okay, now it's a check, now it's not a pin, and in this case we can already play c6, we can target the bishop, bishop has to go away, and now we're going for g5. Now we're stopping f4. Now there is no pin any longer, and we are ready to play b5 and trade the bishop for a knight. So in case of knight g3, h5, well, we're pushing on the king side, and also knight cannot really take on an h5 due to the queen h6 ideas. Knight c1, h5, knight b3, we're trading the knights, and after bishop d7, a4, long castle a5, definitely the both sides are trying to create an attack. We want to attack the king on g1, the white wants to attack our king. After a6, we can always block with the b6, we can block the position. We can also defend with the bishop c8 at some moment if there is any problem on b7. But definitely we want to create an attack against the white's king meanwhile. So definitely chances for both sides in this position. Okay. So what about the d4? d4 break in the center for white instantly. We're going to continue our attack h5. We're not afraid of much. Our idea is to play h5. We want to play king f8, king g7, and we're just going to create some problems for white's king. It's actually not so easy to find a plan for white in this position because f4 is not possible. There is no break in the center any longer. So it's going to be tough for white to find ideas. So bishop is3, bishop goes back. And okay, in this particular case, we have to go for the g5. We have to block the f4 push. And definitely now after knight a5 being played, it's a better version of g5, first attacking the bishop, then playing f4, g5. So d4, white is trying to break, bishop d7, d5. So if we take with a pawn on e5, the problem is there is a queen d5 targeting the knight and the pawn on b7. So we don't want to allow that. We play queen takes on e5, and now queen d5 is not possible anymore. We're also threatening any time to take the bishop if we want to. We don't have to, but we can do it. After castling long, we have ideas of pushing our pawns on the king side, creating an attack against the king. This was all about the bishop g5 move after bishop b4. So let's say what happens in case of knight f3, just normal knight developing move, attacking the pawn on e5. Can we play d5? Yes, we can, and we're going for it. We're going for d5, pawn takes, knight e5. Now we're threatening to win a pawn on c3, so white has to do something. In case of bishop d2, bishop c3 bc, we're just going to transpose to the bishop d2 lines. which we were looking earlier. In case of the castle in the position where white is saying, I don't really care about the pawn on c3, we have to be really careful. Because if we're looking at this position, we can see that white already finished the development, castled, has a few pieces out in the position. So white is actually in front considering the development. So we have to try to catch up with white. And that's why playing something like knight c3, pawn takes, bishop takes on c3 would be a huge problem, since after knight g5, we have a big attack on our king on the f7 square. And let's say after short castle, there is already queen h5, and we are close to losing. After bishop a1, bishop takes on f7. I mean, look at these lines. It's where our king is getting checkmated, or if not checkmated, then I mean, very close to checkmated, but yeah, definitely losing position. We don't want to get all these losing positions. That's why very important move in this position is to play bishop takes on c3. So we definitely need to do something about the knight, because we have a problem on d5. So we take with the bishop on c3. So there is no tempo any longer on the bishop on b4, which was after knight takes on c3. And now we have time for our development. Knight c3 is going to be a mistake due to the queen e1 double attack on the knight and the pawn. So after knight d5, bishop a3, and we cannot really castle any longer. We have issue on e5, and that's position where white is happy to play. So bishop g4, we are first pinning the knight, so knight cannot really jump to g5 like before. Queen cannot go as earlier a wave to e1. So let's say in this position, bishop d2, just normal developing move is played. We will play queen d6, and that's going to transpose actually to the queen d2 variations, which we looked earlier. In case of a d4 move, where white is trying to open up the position and the king, then we're going to castle very quickly. We have to do it. And after take, knight b6, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to go away, rook e8. Now we put more pressure on e5. Let's not forget we are down a pawn in this position. But we are very active. We have potential of taking the pawn on e5, or at least putting more pressure. The pawns are weak for white. So it's definitely a position where we are going to have a game. And we're going to try to target the weaknesses of white. h3 move, targeting our bishop, asking us what do we want to do. And here we have to go for, I mean, we cannot go actually to bishop h5 because it's going to be problematic after rook e1, since g4 is a huge threat, attacking our bishop, eliminating that pin, and the next move taking on e5. So that's why after, oh, sorry. That's why after h3, we have to play knight c3, attacking the queen and removing the queen's protection from the knight. After queen e1, we play bishop f3. In case of g takes f3, knight goes back. Now we doubled and weakened the pawns for white. After bishop a3, knight f4. And we're already creating huge ideas of checkmating the king of white. So queen c3 must be played like in this position. And we go away with the bishop. Bishop d5. We're ready to castle long or short. It depends. We're up a pawn right now in this position. We are ready. We're ready for the game, but also we are very comfortable here because having a pawn, and there is not really much of a compensation for a pawn for white. Rook e1, trying to target the pawn on e5, looks very logical from white. Since our king is still in the center. So we have to do something about it. If we just defend the pawn on d6 with the queen d6, after bishop a3, we have a big problem because we cannot really take. Since bishop takes on d5, targeting c6, everything is falling apart somehow, and it's a very tough position for black. So that's why we have to castle short, even though we prefer castling long. Bishop d2, rook e8, trying to defend everything. h3, bishop goes away. Rook b1, and a very actually important moment right now, because rook is, even though rook is attacking b7, we don't have to rush. We don't have to rush with defending it with something like rook b8, but we have a move a6. We can just go for a6, and after a4, then we can already defend with a rook b8. But in case of rook b7, we just play knight b6, and actually the rook is trapped all the way on b7. There is not much white can do. In case of queen e2, white is creating more pressure on the pawn on e5. We're playing h6, we're just improving, and anytime there is going to be some g4, knight h5 ideas, our bishop is going to have a very nice square on h7 where it's going to hide. All right, knight f3 we just looked at. And now we're coming to the main line with the move knight g2. It's the most popular move, and well, white is first of all defending knight on c3 with a knight. Also, there is an opportunity of going for the f5. And well, of course, we can say black can go with a d5. And where, of course, black is doing so. We have basically nothing else left than to do it because it's working out. So after pawn takes, knight takes. a3, knight has to take. After pawn takes on c3, bishop a5, castle, castle. We kind of transpose into the similar lines we already were looking earlier. So in case knight takes, we take that knight, bc, and queen d6. Castle, bishop e6. Trading the bishops, and after f4, we long castle. After pawn takes on e5, we're taking with a knight. First of all, we're having ideas of attacking the king. On the king side, there are some weaknesses for white. I mean, the position objectively is equal. We have some opportunities to create initiative and create attack against the white's king. Bishop d2 is kind of a way we would not really transpose the bishop d2 lines, but in a way that would be a different move order. So bishop e6, castle, castle, a3, bishop c3, bc, and queen d6. We would have some similar positions to those lines. Bishop takes d5. It was played quite a lot of times. So queen d5, we have to take castle. Queen d7, queen has to go back, definitely. And we are putting the queen on d7 because we don't need the bishop anywhere on this diagonal, but we want to put bishop potentially on b7. So after f4, white is trying to open up the position. We're playing b6, pawn takes, knight d3. And unfortunately here, we don't have really time for a long castle, because after bishop b7, there would be some rook e1 or queen e2 and so on and so on. So that's why we have to castle short. Bishop b7 is going to be played. We're going to put more and more pressure on the g2 pawn, which is definitely going to be a great. Also, we have a bishop pair. Let's not forget about that. That's why definitely there is at least slight edge for black. That was bishop d5. Let's say white is just castling. So now bishop e6 is played. First of all, we can develop immediately to e6 since there is no knight g5 ideas any longer. So a bishop is super comfortable and it cannot be kicked by the knight. There are a few moves, few ideas here. Let's start with knight takes d5. If knight takes, bishop trade is happening. a3, bishop goes all the way back to e7, and position is normal. Knight c3, queen d7. There are no real issues. We want to castle long. We have, again, space advantage due to the pawn on e5, potential of the attack on the on the king side. White is most likely going to try to attack our king on the queen side. So that's going to be a game, a real game, with a good chance. So bishop b5, trying to put some pressure on the pin, on the knight. We castle, bishop takes, bc. White is giving up a bishop, so we have a bishop pair advantage already. But in return for the pawn structure, some problems, weaknesses. Knight e4, going forward, bishop e7, stopping the knight g5 idea. f4, trying to break, trading a couple of pieces, queen d4 check. We're taking the pawn, and we're saying that with the bishop pair and having an extra pawn, we must be at least slightly better in this position. Bishop d2. So here, bishop d6, we have to go back. We're not allowing any kind of tricks from white. Bishop d6, b4, creating another pin on this knight. Queen e1, rook b1, targeting the b2. White has to defend. Some trade is happening on an f4. White has to trade. Bishop b4. The problem with another pin. Bishop returns back. Well, and after queen d4, rook e8, queen h4, some trades. We're definitely having a great opportunities, even though we can say that these pawns are weak, but our queen is super strong potential. Rook can come all the way to the e2. Also white's pawn are kind of weak, and currently we're up pawns, so we shouldn't really complain. This was bishop b5 move. So let's say what happens after f4. White wants to immediately break the center since our king is in the center right now. Knight c3, we're taking the knight. In case of pawn taking on c3, we have an intermezzo check, king h1, bishop c4, tripling the pawns, going into the endgame, and after f6, well, we have a very nice endgame due to all the pawn structure problems for whites. Definitely huge winning chances for black. If knight takes on c3, we're playing queen d4. Checking the king, attacking the knight on c3. King h1, bishop c4, dc. We're winning a pawn right now, fe. Yeah, the problem is for now we cannot yet capture the pawn on e5 due to the ideas of rook e1, queen e1, and so on. So first we take the knight on c3, pawn takes, and then we castle short. There are problems with the pawn structure. We are going to most likely win very soon this pawn on e5, which is going to be a weakness. We'll bring the rooks to the position. We're not sure yet where the rooks are going to stand, but we're going to bring them in the position, and definitely a clear advantage for black. Knight e4 looks like a logical move, bringing the knight all the way to the g5, targeting the bishop on e6. So here, bishop e7 is the most popular move, returning the bishop back to defend it from the knight coming to g5. But in this position, we play castle. The idea is that after knight g5, we can play bishop g4, and the thing is that knight looks not so well placed on g5. But in case knight 2 comes to g3 now, bishop g4 is not a move any longer. And that's why in this position, we have to think what happens after knight g5. And now we have to eliminate opportunity of this move. And that's why now we play bishop e7, stopping knight g5 ideas, which is very, very important move since our bishop is already doing nothing on b4. Queen h5, trying to bring the king to the position, trying to create some squares to attack. f5, attacking the knight. Knight has to go somewhere. g5 looks like the most decent square, but let's say knight goes all back to c3. Then we go knight d4. Trade of the pieces is happening. And after g6, queen d1, knight e6, the position is actually pretty great for black due to all the space advantage. Also, there is a problem for white. In the future, there's going to be a problem to create a passer on the queen side. We're going to have no real such problems. We're going to have opportunities to create a passer on the king side. So knight g5 has to be played, has to be tried out. We got to take that knight. Bishop takes, queen d7. Well, and the thing is that the pieces of white are standing very kind of aggressively on the king side, but they're doing nothing because there is no harmony between the pieces. There is no attacking piece on I mean, the only one that piece which attacks the h7 is a queen. Nothing is helping it. So the pieces are really disbalanced in this position, while we have first of all the space advantage with the e5 and f5 pawns. We have opportunities of knights jumping to the b4. Let's say after bishop d2, knight b4, bishop takes e6, bishop trades the knights. Queen has to go back, already trying to defend the pawn on c2. And after c5, we have a pretty nice position. We have a very nice square on d5. Potentially, knight can go to c6, d4. Again, we have a space advantage, as we were talking about it earlier. Knight is awkward on g3. Great position for black in this line. So that was knight e4. So what happens after bishop d5? This looks like a surprising move. First, like taking with the bishop itself the knight. But actually, there is some concrete idea. So after bishop takes d5, there is f4. And here we have to think, because after castling, this would be actually the main line. Here, white can get a very decent position, since after knight d5, fd5, f5, f6, knight g3, this position which white wants to achieve, to get this very strong pawn on f5, to get all the pieces somewhere on the king side, trying to create attack against the king. But that's why we have to deviate from the main line. We don't play castle here, but we play f6. Very strong move. And actually, it has become popular only recently, in recent years. The main idea is to stay flexible, not to castle yet, not to castle in this position, and to have some opportunities for a long castle in some positions. So let's say f5 is being played. White wants to continue according to the spirit of what white wanted earlier. The problem is that after bishop f7, we can keep the bishop pair, and after king h1, queen d7, knight e4, we can long castle, and now this pawn, which looked very beautiful in f5, can become actually a target, since we are ready to push for g6, opening up position on the king side and create attack against the white's king. So after a3, bishop goes all the way back, b4, g6, targeting the f5. What does white can do? In case of b5, knight d4. Okay, trade can happen, queen g4. Queen g4 actually very nice idea. So even though the rook is hanging, the f takes g6 is possible, but we have super nice move, bishop e6, and after pawn takes, there is no more ideas of discover check. That's why we take the queen on a1, and we are very happy in this position since we are winning. In case of f pawn takes on g6, we take with the bishop. And the thing is that f5 is actually coming, and the problem is that white cannot really capture on the f5. So after on the f6, knight f6, rook f6, bishop h4, and bishop h5, and the knight on e4 and on e2 is going to fall. So that was all about this f5 move. So a3, white is trying to ask some questions for black, what black wants to do. And in case of, we are going actually for bishop c3, knight c3, short castle. Already here we have to play short castle, but this is a different version of it, since after knight d4, bishop e3, c5, we are already getting more space, and the knight is not on g3 as it was before. We don't really see much attack happening while we have strong pieces in the position, and most likely white will have to trade this knight for the bishop, while we're not going to get really attacked on the king side in this structure. But after knight d5, queen d5, fe, knight d5, it's basically a transposition to the main line. So here knight f4 is possible. But after that, we're just going back with the bishop to f7, d4, knight c6, rook e1, bishop e7. Well, and the thing is the castle is going to happen next. The problem now for white is that we're having a bishop pair, the opportunities of attacking the pawn on d4, and actually white is the one who is trying to equalize here, which is not so easy. So d4 attacking the knight on e5, we have to go back, knight g6, knight d5, trading, knight f4, we're trading as well, and we're playing long castle again. As we're saying it, if there is a chance to castle long and create some initiative, we're doing so in this case as well. This position is objectively equal, but definitely opposite side castling is bringing opportunities for both sides, chances of attack for both white and black. So knight takes d5 immediately. In this position, queen d5, knight f4 targeting the queen, which allows it to go back to the d7 square, c3, bishop d6, and d4. In this position, I would like you to stop the video and try to find the best move for black. So I hope you found this very nice idea. So the question is, where do we move the knight? And that's a tricky question because we don't move the knight at all, since we're long castling. Because after d5, we have a beautiful bishop c5 intermezzo check, and we're going to win material. So queen p3 has to be played, but even now we're playing knight g6, knight e6, rook fd8, d5, knight f8. And well, this game actually happened in the tie breaks. Anish Giri was playing with black against Andrei King in the tie breaks of the Grand Prix. And that was a very important game. And of course, there was a clear advantage till this moment in the game, and white couldn't really solve development issues, and the only active pieces were actually traded. So in case of a c3, that's the more precise move order for white, because after the bishop coming to d6, we cannot jump with the queen all the way to d7. So now knight f4 attacking the queen. So we have to go to f7. So it's not very ideal place for a queen, but still a good one. So after d4, long castle, again, there are no ideas of taking, since after bishop c5, white is losing a queen. And after queen a4, actually the knight cannot be taken again. So we're playing a6, stopping ideas of taking the pawn on a7. And after queen b3, there is knight c4. But let's see what happens in case of d4. Then we're having a check on the king. And the problem is that the rook on f1 is getting trouble, since after king h1, there is take on e5 and a pin on this knight and the rook. So we're winning back a piece, let's say after rook f3. Also, rook f3 is a very difficult move to find, actually. So we have better pieces, we have better positions here, and we're slightly better, definitely. And the best move for white, rook f3, which is very difficult. I mean, it's not so easy to find, definitely. And after e takes f4, bishop takes f4, queen d5, definitely slightly advantage for black due to the more active pieces in this position. That was all from the bishop's opening chapter. I would like us to go through the key moments and concepts from this chapter. You can see how you memorized it, or we just do a short summary altogether. So let's start with this position. So here, white is eliminating the threat of the knight coming to d4 with a c3 move, but at the same time, white is allowing d5. So one more time, the reminder, if you have an idea of pushing the d5, please consider it. It might work out pretty nicely, as in this position. The next position is very critical. When white is going for the f4, the moves you have to consider is taking on f4 and then d5, or immediately d5. In this position, both moves are working, but taking on f4 and then d5 is more precise move order. And in that way, you're just playing dynamically the way the position requires in this case. After h3 is being played, the thing is in this position that we're going back with a bishop on h5. And the big problem is that we're actually blundering, since after knight e5, the bishop is attacked on h5 and the queen is attacked on d7. So that's why it's very important that here we have the move queen d6. So we are not allowing these opportunities of knight to attack the queen by taking on e5. All right. The next move, next position. So when queen was attacking the pawn on g7, the thing here is that we're allowing white to take on g7 with a move queen d6, because we will castle long. And after queen takes on g7, we're going to bring more pieces. We're going to create threats with h5 or bringing the rook to the g8 and trying to win more and more tempos. We shouldn't be afraid of losing material if we're getting an advantage in the development. This position after the bishop coming to g5, we have a typical idea, which we're doing also in many other openings against other openings, is first asking question of the bishop, where does it want to go? Does it want to take on f6 or go back to h4 or back to e3 or wherever? So h6 is definitely a very useful move to see where the bishop goes. And if bishop goes back, then we can already continue the line and consider playing g5 with a follow-up of a d5. That's already another story, but similar idea. So in this position, the last move was bishop b3, right? Yes, the bishop b3 was played. Yes, and of course, very important not to allow here white to play f4. We haven't castled yet, so the king is not yet on the king side. So g5 may feel like a weakening move, but it's still a move. It's possible, and it's stopping and blocking ideas of white going forward with f4. So definitely the move which you should consider, and later you can castle long, and this move and even kind of help you to start the attack against the king on the king side. So the next position is where there is a lot of pressure on the d5. We have to do something in this position. We're uncastled, we are behind in the development, and well, the problem here is we must not go for the winning of the pawn on c3, since we're going to lose time with that and create some very nice opportunities for our opponent. That's why very important in this position is to capture the knight on c3 with the bishop, not losing any time, not taking a pawn. It's important that we take material only if we don't harm our development, or when we know that we can win that material because we know some lines, because we know, okay, it's a theory, we can take that pawn. But in this particular case, we have to finish the development. We are not allowed to capture the pawns just like that. So in this position, rook b1 was just played. We were just recently looking at this position, and we discussed it that in this position we shouldn't rush defending the pawn, but we can play a6, pretty typical move. After rook takes on b7, then we can of course try to trap the rook with a knight b6. So we shouldn't always rush to defending. Sometimes we can give the pawns, and well, there could be also some tricks. And that's a position where we were also discussing just recently. There is an option for black. It's not there is an option, but there is an option for white to go for the knight g5. That's already a threat. Secondly, the bishop is doing not much on b4 any longer, so this is a perfect position where we are bringing bishop back to e7, stopping idea of the knight coming to g5, and just improving our piece. So this is a reminder for you, so that not every developing move is a move forward, but it's also a move backwards. Like in this case, bishop is returning backwards, and it's actually a developing and improving move. And the last position is after pawn reached the f5 square. So we shouldn't rush here into castling short, since we can go bishop f7, retreat with the bishop. In the next move, we can play queen d7, long castle, and actually target this pawn on f5 with the ideas of g6. But first, we have to bring the bishop on e7 to defend the pawn on f6. It's also very important. So yeah, definitely we shouldn't rush and go into a position where white wants us to go. In this case, white would love us to castle short, but we shouldn't force ourselves into it. So that was it about the bishop's opening chapter. I hope you enjoyed and it was useful for you, and I'm going to see you in the next chapter.